There are so many worlds that we experience and meet in Star Trek that we just kind of never think of again. And sometimes that's fine, and other times it's like, wait a minute, weren't they worshipping a computer god? Yeah, we should probably like check on them. We should see what the Cerritos is up to. With that in mind, I'm Sean Ferrick for TrekCulture, and here are 10 worlds we should probably check on. Number 10, Kardashia Prime. As Admiral Wong put it, nobody wants to go to Kardashia Prime. The Cardassians are creeping everyone out. It's true that the levity of Star Trek Lower Decks might take the Cerritos off the cards when it comes to the somber and solemn missions, like keeping up with the Cardassians. That said, since the end of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, no one else, on screen at least, has had the stomach to go back there either. In 2375, as the Dominion War was coming to a close, Kardashia Prime was reduced to rubble. Over 800 million of its citizens were killed as a genocidal afterthought of the chief changeling with whom Cardassian leaders had made a Faustian pact to conquer the Alpha Quadrant. We can be fairly sure that the Federation didn't just leave Cardassia alone to get on with things, but wouldn't it be good to see confirmation of that in canon? Requiem for a hug, anyone? In our article, Star Trek Story Arcs That Legacy Should Continue, one of the most enticing themes for a new Cardassia in the beta canon is that Garak would now be in charge. Just to see the former thinker, tailor, soldier, spy's face pop up on the view screen would be worth the trip alone. Number 9, Aati Prime. The Xindi are one of the most unique species in Star Trek. That is, they are, in fact, a collection of 6 sentient species, of which one, the Avians, are extinct. In the early 21st century, the Xindi destroyed their homeworld, Xindus, during a civil war. The Xindi then became a nomadic set of peoples, guided to wherever safe harbor could be found in the Delphic Expanse by the mysterious sphere builders, or Guardians. The Xindi did make one star system and planet more of a home, however, Aati Prime. In Star Trek Enterprise's 3rd season, this was their central base of operations for their plot to destroy Earth. Go big or go home, I suppose. In the 23rd century, Aati Prime showed up in blue on Spock's color-coded First Contact and the UFP presentation to Captain Pike and La'an, indicating the Xindi might be Federation members by that point. We know that all factions of the Xindi eventually reneged on their plan to destroy Earth because, well, Earth wasn't destroyed. In Star Trek Prodigy, a group of Xindi reptilians were working security on an outpost near the Romulan neutral zone, and they didn't seem to want to kill all humans. It would be good, however, and entirely sensible, for someone in Archer's time to go and see how they were getting on. Number 8, wherever Remek's homing signal was headed. So this one is most likely a terrible idea. What is it they say, however, the best defense is good offense? Given the threat posed by those little butt bugs, how in the name of all things unholy has anyone not gone to check up on them that we know of? We mention them so often, you're probably going to start thinking we're all a bunch of anal retentives here at TrekCulture, now that everyone's got that laugh out of their system. In reality, we don't know where the Bluegill homeworld is, assuming they even have one. It's an already infected Admiral Quinn who states in Conspiracy that they were discovered accidentally by a survey team on an uncharted planet. So that information is probably about as reliable as the transporter in an ion storm. Plus, that doesn't mean said planet was the buttbug homeworld either. At the end of Conspiracy, Data manages to trace the homing beacon Mother Remek sent from Earth to an unexplored sector of our galaxy. Someone needs to go and do some fancier triangulation on the signal than that, so Starfleet can go prevent an invasion for once. Perhaps the Klingons could help. After all, they've been itching for a new verse in their opera of war against minute creatures of the galaxy. Number 7, the Vidian homeworld. All it took was an offhand mention from the crafty Kurus to pique our curiosity. Head of the nefarious think tank used to telling lies wrapped in enigmas of pure tactics surrounded by neutronium alloy in a layer of subspace, Kurus was hardly a trustworthy source. But let's give his statement about the Vidians some further reflection. As his conversation with Captain Janeway went, just recently we found a cure for the Vidian phage. The Vidians? You would hardly recognize them now. If this is true, and I don't think we dare imagine what the think tank asked for in return, it would have meant a seismic shift for Vian Society, once known as educators, explorers, and artists, before they were stricken with the phage about the time of Earth's 4th century AD. Now that, if you've got the Benemite or a protostar, popping to and from that part of the Delta Quadrant isn't the same challenge it once was, it might be worthwhile for Starfleet to go check things out. Trusting liar isomorph on fire might risk everyone ending up with a distinct lack of organs, but even the remotest chance to see the Vidians in a healthy state is surely too tantalizing to ignore. The species, necessity and invention and all of that, was also strides ahead in medical technology, which might be useful, and they owe us one for Lieutenant Durst and all of that deadlocked Voyager. Schmullus might get to see his friend again too. Number 6, the one with the salamander babies. Now that we're back in the Delta Quadrant, we might as well stay there for a bit to find out what happened to a set of potential crew members so unusual Chakotay left them behind. Strap in, as Tom Paris said to Captain Janeway. We're going to Warp 10. Let's look at this from the perspective of Star Trek Picard, which ended in 2402. The events of Threshold took place in 2372, so that means Janeway and Paris's biological children would be, under normal circumstances, 30 years old, if they weren't otherwise evolved. Putting aside the fact that both parents might want to check on their progeny, salamander or no, it's worth wondering what impact, if any, the now grown-up grim glimpses at humanity's future biology have had on the planet and its ecosystem. That said, the episode was, with good reason, called Most Likely to Give Darwin a Migraine in the book Star Trek 101, A Practical Guide to Who, What, Where and Why. It's unlikely that the salamanders could do much more than waddle or swim about on the unnamed planet, but did they continue to proliferate after Voyager left? Are they sentient? They might not be Homo sapiens anymore, but they could still be described as human, so there's probably a whole colony of them by now. Tom, Catherine, I think you need to go meet your grandkids. Oh, Anthony. Number 5, the Q Continuum. The Q have descended to wreak havoc on the lower planes of the Star Trek universe more times than Captain Janeway has had hot coffee, and yet members of Starfleet have only got to visit them twice. Neither of those times was the Grand Tour, but then the Continuum is perhaps only world in the broadest sense of the word. We know that it's possible to get to the Continuum without the handiwork of one of its members, even if the method was very specific and rather dangerous. Voyager had to fly right into a supernova, which was caused by spatial disruptions from the continuing civil war. Right at the moment of the star's implosion, a negative density false vacuum was created which pulled matter, hence Voyager, into the continuum. Do try and wrap your minuscule mind around it, Chuckles. Someone really needs to check up on the Q too. The OG Q, the John Delancey Q, did at times show a softer side, and he did die, although true to form, in the most non-linear fashion. Aunt Kathy might want to see how Q Jr.'s holding up. As an audience, we also know that in Star Trek Discovery's 32nd century setting, there has been no contact between the Federation and the Q Continuum for 600 years. What happened, or will happen, in the late 26th century that could account for such an absence? Maybe it was just a particularly boring period in history where the Q are concerned. Been there, done that, got the time travel t-shirts. Either way, it would be prudent to find out. Number 4, Sarus. Another Delta Quadrant one, I know. Stranded Captain Janeway and crew were pretty prolific with their first contacts, though, so they're hard to avoid. In this case, both sides probably wish they'd never laid sensors on each other, let alone met up for silk supper and spatial trajection. Voyager might have been the party poopers of the galaxy, but the Sicarians' legendary hospitality that preceded them got tiresome all too quickly. The reason we might want to check up on Sarus is what happened after Voyager left: assimilation. Either a group of Sicarians or the entire planet fell victim to the dreaded Borg Collective. In the light of the events of Star Trek Picard Season 3, what looked to be the end of the Borg Collective as we know it, it might be a good idea to go take a peek at Borg space more generally. If we are to believe what the Borg Queen said to Picard in The Last Generation, it doesn't seem like anyone in Starfleet actually did. Until recently, there was no collective left. You left us, poisoned. No worlds to consume, no roads by which to return, just the cruelty to die by starvation and age. There's still a great deal we don't know about the years between alternate Admiral Janeway's neurolytic pathogen and the Jupiter Jack transmitter cube, but if the collective was in ruins, what did that mean for the thousands of solar systems once under their control? What happened to the countless former drones on all of the Borg assimilated worlds? Were billions really just left to die? Number 3, Shorleaf Planet. This one could just be for the fun of it, and for a bit of variation from the holodeck or the rec room, depending on your time period. I mean, what could go wrong a third time, right? In fact, that's exactly why we should go check up on the Shorleaf Planet. It might be no picnic down there once more. The Shorleaf, or amusement park planet, as per Spock's description, located in the Omicron Delta region, was built by a highly advanced alien civilization and offered the chance to play to anyone who visited by conjuring up just about anything they could imagine. A landing party from Kirk's Enterprise found found that out the hard way when they first visited. Even though he did apologize, the care in caretaker of the planet seemed to have become a little lacking. It's the Enterprise's second visit that should give everyone cause for a third. The caretaker, or the keeper, had died, and the planet's artificial intelligence, no longer amused by its own amusement park, wanted off the world by any means necessary, which meant taking control of the Enterprise and turning off those on the surface, to go find its fellow computers and rule the galaxy. Luckily, the away team managed to convince it to give peace a chance, to learn by having the galaxy come to it for entertainment. Someone should probably go make sure it's keeping its promise. Me personally, I'm going to stick to Ryza. At least the Horgon can't kill you, even if Jamaharon might. Number 2, Iconia. In the mid-24th century, the Iconians were considered, by some, well, maybe just Wesley Crusher, in need of a history lesson, to be a myth. In fact, a highly advanced civilization about 200,000 years ago, the Iconians were now thought to be extinct. The Iconian home world was rediscovered in 2365 by the USS Yamato, sister ship of the Enterprise D. Seeing what happened to the Yamato as a result, nearly repeated on the Enterprise and a roving Romulan warbird, it might be rather foolish to even suggest a return to Iconia. Nothing was left on the surface of the planet following the ancient orbital bombardment and the destruction of the last remaining outpost by Captain Picard. Things hardly ended well either in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, where the technology of the demons of air and darkness was concerned. Far from being extinct, the Iconians were also a main threat in Star Trek Online. Nonetheless, for scientific and historical curiosity alone, isn't it just a teeny bit tempting to go check on Iconia? Who knows what fascinating relics could still be down there? It's equally a little callous to say, but no Romulus also meant no Romulan neutral zone after 2387, and that should have made visits to and archaeological exploration of Iconia a lot easier. Number 1, Sigma Iota 2 and spin-off. Exactly what was Dr. McCoy's beef, in the language of the gangster planet below? He'd left it in Bela's office. It being his communicator, of course. Oh, never mind. It's the end of the episode now. Let's just make a pun on the title and hope the freeze frame makes everyone forget about cultural contamination. Cut back to 2152, and Lieutenant Reed and company are ransacking Decon, launch bay, and shuttle pod because a communicator might have been left on a pre-war planet. The Star Trek Enterprise episode The Communicator was directly inspired by Kirk's jocular reaction to McCoy's omission admission at the end of A Piece of the Action. In both cases, we hope Starfleet's been keeping an eye, from orbit, on the interfered with planets, but it's arguably Sigma Iota 2 that needs the most attention. When Kirk and crew arrived in 2268, Sigma Iota 2 had already been culturally cocked up by the first contact with the starship Horizon 100 years earlier. Whilst not bound by the non-interference directive, the Horizon had apparently forgotten about the NX-01 incident, we'll let retcon deal with that, leaving behind all sorts of books, including Chicago mobs of the 20s. The Iotans then modelled their entire society around it, Tommy guns, confusing colloquialisms, and all. If not to check for that communicator, they should go back to Sigma Iota 2 to see how the weirdest trade deal in Federation history is holding up. Thanks very much, folks. Thank you very much to Jack Kiley, who wrote the article that this is based on. Make sure you check that out on whatculture.com. Make sure you're following us at TrekCulture on Twitter and Blue Sky and TikTok, and at TrekCultureYT over on Instagram. I have been Sean Ferrick. You can follow me at Sean Ferrick on the various socials. Look after yourselves. You are awesome. You are wonderful. And let's make 2024 something fun and wonderful. Make it so. Thanks, folks.